Hi friends, in this video I am going to give a demo about the databases I created as part of my project. So I have different versions of databases in SQL Server and Oracle Server. So these are the three versions with different requirements, meeting the different business requirements, and the same version I have in the SQL Server. So the first task was to um, migrate data from a raw flat file source, for example, say CSV file like this, which is not normalized into our database. So for that, I created all the tables required. So I have these tables for the first versions, like employee orders, order line, product, vendorship, and others, among others. So and the same data in the SQL Server database, as you can see here. So to migrate, first thing I did was to migrate the data into the SQL Server, and to do that I used this SQL Server integration services. So to create, uh, we can use SSIS to connect, use different sources and migrate data to different destinations. Say, for example, from flat file to a database, or from a database to another database, or say like SQL Server database to SQL Server database, or vice versa. So the first thing I did was I created a project from the business intelligence. I chose the integration services, gave it a name, and uh, that and clicked on OK, and that created this project with the Solution Explorer. Then the next thing I did, I grab the flat file source. These are the sources, these are the destinations. So here's the flat file source and OLEDB destination as the destination, as database as destination. So then I configured it, created the connection, and I have these connections over here. So I can view, like, if the connection you form, you can view the content from it. So I'm not since I have already made the connection, I'm just going to cancel it. And then after configuring your source file, you need to I need to configure the destination. So also for the destination we need to form a connection. So to do that, we can click on new, select our database, give the authentication, and select the database name. And once text the connection, if the connection is succeeded, then we can select the database from here and click on OK. If everything is, if it everything goes well, the connection will be formed, and we can do the mappings from here. Okay, then once these are sources and destinations are configured, I connected them together. And then I used a staging table in my database at first, which uh, streamlined all the records from here to staging table that is contained in here. So if you are not if you don't want to create a staging table beforehand in the database, while then you can always click on new, which will create a new table in your in the database you selected from the columns from this flat file. So after that, I uh, once the connection is firm, we you always I had to execute it, clicking on start, and if it is successful, it will show green check signs. And then the next thing was to write some store procedures. So I have the store procedures over here. Mm, okay, so I need to, we can use the store procedures like this to like insert into the destination table and select from the table using the group by joins or and group by functions. So that will grab the data from the selected statement and insert that into the table we want. So and after the store procedure is created, we I grabbed the store procedure and put that into the control flow task. So we connect take a execute SQL task over here, connect it, and in the execute we make sure we select the connection and write the store procedure here, and then click on start, and it will run all the store procedure and break down all the information from the staging table into this all these tables. So now if we want to say just to check the record number of records in the table, uh, we can do that by, let's see, I need to grab the code. Okay, so say for example I'm using I change this to version 1b and count the number of records. So these are all the records inserted from the flat file into the database. So same goes for the Oracle, like create first um, create the required tables, then you staging table that will hold all the information from the flat file, and create the store procedures to break down those flat files and connect create a project, SSIS project, and create the data flow flat file source and data OLEDB destination. But to connect with the OLEDB destination, and that is different from SQL Server. To we need to form a connection using um, OLEDB, Oracle provider for OLEDB, and if when you select that, we give the uh, service name of the database. So for example, if here I have test4 underscore old underscore var1, so I will give that name over here, the username. So my username and password for the database, test the connection and click on OK. And if the connection is successful, and then we run this task, so then it the data will be migrated from the flat file to the staging table to the specified table into the database. So again, the same way as the SQL Server, we create the stored procedures for Oracle, and then uh, create execute SQL task, configure it, and give the connection that we created, and run the store procedure from here. That will migrate all the information from flat file to the database, and then we can split that data using the store procedures. So since then, after the data is broken down into all these tables for version 1, so I could just instead of running the same thing I have over again for version 2 and version 3, um, I could generate a script from database export and select the database I want to export, and then uh, from here I can select the insert, and select a single file, and click on next, and this process will generate uh, all the schema and data from this database into a single file. And then we can create another database, and like for example say test for ver1, and we can run that script into this database, and everything, the including uh, including the data will be inserted into this new database. And then I created the other tables like commission, that was not present in the old version, and return category, return product, and then insert statements for those. and uh, and for the third version, and I needed some uh, commission audit, monthly commissions, and the object oriented. So I created the script, so I can show you the scripts. um, Test for Oracle version 3. So this is my schema. So these are the types the type for person that can be used by the employee type, and uh, that will can be used in say object o employee category, sorry, okay, o employees, and that type can be used here. And these are all other schema script, and I have the script, insert script generated from the database, and these scripts are for the object oriented inserts. So that way I created the three different versions. So now um, uh, for the SQL Server, I have created these other tables, like I have some few other contents beside the old version. Now I wanted all the data moved to the two newly created databases, the version 2 and the version 3. So to do that, instead of creating the project like instead of migrating everything from the source to a staging table and break using a stored procedure to break down everything, and that would be time consuming. So other option was to connect the Oracle and SQL Server, uh, make a form a pipeline and migrate all the tables including the data into the SQL Server. So for to migrate the data from Oracle to SQL Server, I created a SSIS project that would connect the two data different servers using OLEDB connection. So I created different the data flows. So data flow task 1 has all these connections from source to destination. So similarly I have 6 different uh, data flow tasks, because all for different um, uh, source destination connection. So first thing was, since we are not here using flat file, instead we are using a destination source, database as a source and database as a server as a destination. So we need to configure that. So from we can do that by creating a new connection, and the so say our source is Oracle. So if in that case I would select OLEDB Oracle provider, and once clicking on that, give the server or file name. So say I want to import data from this test for ver1, so I will give this exact same name, because that is contained in our TNS naming. TNS names file for Oracle, and then give the credential, username and password, test connection, and click on OK. I'm canceling it. And once the connection is formed, we can view all the table from there. And all the table contained in the Oracle. So these are the table from this user's schema, and then we select the table we need, the customer, and then connect our destination table. So our destination table would be we can create a new connection and use this native OLEDB or SQL Server native client, and select the server name. So this is my uh, name of the server, and select the authentication, give username, password, test connection, and click on OK, and select the destination table you want to move that data to. So since my destination source is customer, I want to move that to a customer. Or you can click on new, that will take the fields from the source and create a new table, and with the fields given in the source, and then do the mappings. You can map the check, recheck, verify before running the process, and then once we're satisfied, we can click on OK. So we do the same process for all the source and destination tables. And after we're done, when we go we make a data flow task. We prepare the data with the required uh, statements, and run all the data flow tasks accordingly. And once our process is complete, we will have the all the tables and all the tables created and data inserted into that table. So I migrated the data using this method, like connecting one server to another. You can also use different techniques, like making a link server, and that will show all your content from another server into your SQL server, and you can migrate the data. That is also done using SSIS. So that SSIS can be very useful. So yeah, and for the third version, I did the same thing. I created a SSIS package and migrated all the data from Oracle version 3. uh, um, that is before creating the object oriented tables. Or if it doesn't matter, if you have the object oriented table, you can always choose which table you want to migrate to your SQL Server database. So from the version 3, I migrated um, all these tables, including the monthly commission audit, um, um, and okay, these things. And I forgot to mention before, after migrating this data, I had to migrate the another raw data, that is other raw data, that is no, raw data, okay, this one. So it has to be normalized the same way, and these are some common different other requirements that needed to be moved into um, accordingly. So these information can also be moved into a staging table using SSIS, and then we can use the stored procedure to insert from the staging table into the table we want that data to be. So after doing that, I have on these three data prepared, so we can check the content from this database. So I can run a quick count table script. So this is my count table script for that will show the number, all the tables and the number of records contained into them. So my tax table is 4, monthly commission has 496, promo price is 5, and all other among all other records. So then I have uh, this is the example for Oracle. So I have these queries. I wrote these queries. So I needed them monthly commission and commission audit, and then these are the sequences created, and this is the store proc that will um, insert into the SP vendor. So what this explore proc does is like it checks the quantity order. If the quantity is ordered is greater than quantity on hand, it orders makes a order to the vendor and inserts the vendor ID and shipping ID into the vendorship table, and checks if the ID is 1, that means it's ground. It is the ID is from my shipping method ID table, that is ground. 1 means ground. So uh, the received shipped date increased by 3, and uh, else by 1. Okay, and and then also inserts that inserted value new record into the quantity and the product ID into the order line, and updates that quantity accordingly. And we can actually run this store proc and see what happens. So say I want to order for um, product number 10 from this vendor with this ID. So and I can check select from I want to see. Okay, let's see vent zip ID. Vent zip and new record got inserted. Yeah, actually it got inserted. So if I run this again and the other record got inserted, and if I select from insert into broadband order line, broadband, okay, broadband ORD, I get that record inserted. Since I inserted 3 times, it got inserted 3 times with different ID. And from say broadband OL, so I want to see the quantity, so the quantity got inserted for product ID 10. So I can say this stored procedure is working. Then I have um, these stored the trigger, this trigger like on commission audit, that whenever there is an update on commission, there will be new value inserted into the commission audit. So before after that I have this stored procedures. So actually I can run the driver program. Say this is the driver program. I can run this and see the result. Okay, so I think it was not actually created. I need to create the store proc. Let me copy all this. So I will create this first procedure, and I will only run that. So com1 is compiled, and I have the this driver program here, and when I run this I get the result. Okay, so the same goes for the other tool, for the yearly and for the monthly. And I have also the functions that does the same thing. So we can see that those functions over here, and if we implement these create these functions on this database, it will work. So okay, so that is for about Oracle. And for version 1 and version 2 I have similarly the queries and other required scripts. So this file contains the schema, like the create table and everything. And this file has the table count. We can see the records. I have listed all the records. And the insert script is in this file. So this I put all the insert script in this file, and this file contains the uh, queries. So I can run this is queries. Okay, let me change the database to version 2, version 1. Okay, so this queries seems to work. So I'm not gonna run all the queries, but there was just a demo that the queries I have that works on this specific database. So the same goes for the Oracle 1 version 1. Now moving to the SQL Server. So similarly I have the uh, this this schema and inserted script into this file. We can actually see this. So this is generated after like moving all the data into creating all the schema and moving the data and generating the script from the SQL Server. So then the count table shows all the records. So this is the version 1, and the queries. So actually let's try running a query into the SQL Server. So I'm going to use this version 1 because this is the script from version 1. So let me try running this, and we get the results. So this is the example. So the queries, all other queries work similarly. And then for the version 2, it also meets the same requirement as it's actually identical to Oracle's version. So I have this version here. So the tables with the commission, uh, return category, return product. So and if I have the count value. So the return category has 6, return product has 48. and the new or other added information and the queries. So these are the queries. These also works fine in. So I mean, if I have already created all these all these required sequences, and let's see. Okay, so it's already been created. So let me run this stored proc once again. Successfully compiled. Then I will run this execution again. So we have quantity 200, vendor ID 3, cost this, SMID this. So all these many records got inserted. So let us check select all from vend zip. So new record got inserted. This should be probably that, and from prod vend ord. So okay, 12,000 here that got inserted, and let's say uh, 9,000 to just to test it. So yeah, we got data inserted here. So let's see in order line. Yep, order line has also recorded that PB vendor order ID this, and yep, it's working. So I will get rid of this. Okay, then the other queries, those also seems to work fine. If I select from okay the orders, so I have to change this to nearest because this is because I later migrated one single table and that got renamed, so I have to change this sometimes. So we are getting the result. Okay, then this is the second version of the SQL Server, and the third version. So the third version of SQL Server does I could not is not object oriented, but it has the tables, all the tables to for calculate the commission and insert into to hold the information about the commission audit and other related other information. And the reason why object oriented could not be implemented in SQL Server is like in um, in Oracle we can create the data types and use wait should show it 3 object oriented schema. Okay, let's see. So in Oracle we can create the data types and we can insert by creating like insert statements like this. So we can give the types here and we can create the object person type as we can create an object, but and then we can use that object to create types and we can create nested tables and everything, and we have the member functions so that can return some do some calculations and return that value, and we can actually use that. But in SQL Server we have when we look into the programmability and going under types, we have user defined types. But so the user defined data types are like to use the same thing as varchar, but you can set your varchar as, say, you want 10 each time. So instead of writing varchar 10, say you created a data types, say my data type, and that has this value. So you can always say my data, my type, or say you created my type and that has this thing, that is equivalent to varchar 10, then you can say always use my type. Then we can create user defined table types, that is like similar to tables with columns, keys, constraints and everything, but the usage is very different from what we do in Oracle. So for example, I created this test table with test ID as identity, auto increment, name, age. Then I had to create the type UDT as table. It's not an object, it's just table. So the table has columns a name and age. Then to use this we need to create a procedure. So I created a store procedure as this name, with a instance variable as this, which on this insert as table and as only read only. So then we begin insert into this test name, age, and select all from this instance variable, and we declare this new variable as UDT insert, on UDT insert, and we have these insert statements then, and we then execute it. So when we execute, and if we select from wait select all from test, sorry, create table, oh I'm reusing the wrong table, database, sorry, my bad. So now then we select from this, we can see that all these records got inserted, but this is not object orientation. We are using a different table type. We can use this table type, but this is we cannot implement fully functional database, object oriented database concept in SQL Server, uh, Microsoft SQL Server. And if you research some on internet, you will find lots of information from experts that no, we cannot do object oriented databases in SQL Server, because, and there are lots of reasons for that, and I just showed you one of the reason, because one of the reason is like you don't have any like flexibility, like compared to Oracle, as like Oracle gives you option to create these data objects and use them differently. So okay, that was the part like I demonstrated, like after demonstrating about the databases and the queries, the functions, stored procs. Now let's move on to how we can use SSRS to generate reports from our say for like our database. So obviously we can always use let me open up the file first. We can always use our database and the queries from our database, or we can say for example, first we need to create the connection for a specific database. So con1 is for, these all are connections from the SQL Server. So con1 is for version 1, 2 for version 2, 3 for version 3. So we'll say we are using connection 1 and we want to use we want to create a report from our database. So here we select the connection 1, click on next, give the username and password, then either we can copy paste say any query that we have at hand. Okay, no, not this is not that. Okay, let me grab a quickly grab a query from my file. So let's see, I want this query to be report generated from this query. I can either paste, give a query as a query, and then if it will take, and we can choose the tabular or matrix format. Now say I give number of employee per job title. So let's uh, let's keep them both in details. So this is test report. Now finish it. Then we can always change our names here. Say I want to give it my name. So preview it. We can also always do a preview. So give the username password we set before. Okay. Okay, so this is the report generated from the query. So we can use almost different combination of queries, whatever report we want. Obviously, if we can use queries, write SQL queries, that comes in handy. And we can instead, since we cannot deploy the report right now because we don't have that capability and we don't have the server, we can export it to these three formats. So I have exported my reports into PDF format. So these are some of the reports I can open and show it to you. So we can share these reports with like any person we want. So these are the report generated from the different queries. So okay. And say for example you don't want to use SQL query, don't want to pass a query to generate a report. So for that purpose, for this I'm selecting connection 3. For that purpose, SSRS has a query builder. So we can use the query builder, which brings out this GUI interface from where we can select the tables from our database. Say for example, I want to grab the brand and product, sorry, product and brand, add that, and I can select brand name, product ID, product name. For now I and the brand ID. Okay, then click on OK, next, and say I want to put this all these things in details. So test 2. So let's see what we got generated. Mm, let's preview. Let's see. Okay, so this is the report generated from the query we made using the GUI from SSRS. So yeah, obviously we can always group things. Like it would be better if we had grouped our query using the brand name. So but this was just an example of how we can do either using SQL writing a query or using the GUI to do the thing for us. So using this I used the queries that I have already written, so I just passed those into the SSRS, and that generated a report from me. And I showed you this couple of reports in PDF format. So this is the generated report generated for gross sale based on days of weeks with the order ID and customer ID. So then in the second for the second version, I have reports like the total amount, total quantity, uh, and the total product, total order by each state. So then I have another report for last name, um, for of customer, their total orders they handle, month, and their ID. Then likewise, the quantity of the product, the name, the product ID, and its category. Then um, the first name, last name of so it would have been better if I gave it a name, something like if it is a customer name or the employee name. That is not clear here. I could have made it a little bit clearer. So yeah, this customer's name, because it seems like it does not fit, the format did not fit into this PDF, so it's broken down into the next page. But here we can see the customer name, first name, last name, the total order, month, total amount, the order ID it's generated, and the order date, and the next follow-up call date. So yep. And there was another report based for employee, their total sales, their street, and their top ranks. Okay. Okay, so we can see the stress, because some of there are null, because there are no value for there were no value in the old records, old raw file, so it's not showing up. So the next thing I want to tell you is, like, we can also always run stored procedures, pass a stored procedure in a, to generate a report, because we have already created a stored procedure on our database, and we can use that stored procedure to generate reports. So these reports are generated actually from a stored procedure, um, and it's not fitting in. Okay, this is from the stored procedure that I wrote. And the last one is from the all the functions grouped together. So it's again broken down into another page, because it did not fit into one. So that this generates a report for each employee ID, the total commission by um, year, year, the total commission, yearly commission, and monthly commission. So we can do that to use SSRS to generate reports from the stored procedures and functions too. So yeah, to sum it up, like, I used SSIS to migrate uh, data from flat file to a database, and generated a script to make other databases with other required, to meeting other requirements. And then I created um, uh, and version 1 of the SQL Server database using the SSIS and flat file. But then I migrated the data from all the schema and data from Oracle to SQL Server using OLEDB connection, using SSIS. And then I wrote the queries and stored procedure, and used uh, SSRS to generate the report from the queries and the stored procedures. So SSIS and SSRS is very useful tool to migrate data from different sources and write queries. After writing the queries to generate the reports, that meaningful reports to make sense of the data. So yeah, I hope this makes give some insight about how we can create our databases and use tools like SSIS to make create our own projects. So this was a demo of my project. Thank you for watching.